Greetings, everyone, and welcome once more to Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back into the world of darkness once more? I really do hope you are, because we're going to be heading to the world of Changeling, the worlds of dreaming once more, and learn about another kind of. We're going to be dividing our good friends, the Sidhe, even more. Today, we're learning about those that came from Arcadia in particular, and how they differ from your average sheep. So if we're ready to dive in and learn about these nobles from beyond the veil that abandoned our world only to come back with a resurgence. I'm your host, and I can guide you through the dreaming, to this other Earth, a different Earth than our own. And you can learn about the Arcadian. Please do give me a little bit of a tip while you're here. Remember, like the video, and of course, subscribe. And in the comments, let me know if you've played a sheep. One from Arcadia, an autumn one, or something else, something different, something unique. What have you done? How have you encountered? Keep me informed in the comments below. Well, our travel awaits. Are you ready? Let us go. And let's begin to learn. We've arrived once more to the world of darkness. So, the fact is that the division between those of Arcadia and those of the Autumn really didn't come into being until C20, the 20th anniversary. That's where the definition became more important, and defined them as two different sides of the same coin. The sheer fact is that before now, they were just one group, but there were some that had stayed behind, but they weren't defined differently, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. It was an oddity. That's where we get into this more interesting division, where our more traditional sheep are the Arcadians. Let's talk. Let's dive deep into it. So, here's the thing. When the commoners were trapped in the mortal world, and the nobles fled to Arcadia, going to shadow, the sheep thought, when we come back, it'll be just how we left it. Or close enough. Everything was different. Commoners had thrived without them. They had their own leadership. So these first generation Arcadian sheep that came back post-shattering were hit with a ton of bricks for children. They were fragile, prone to banality, reliant on old customs, couldn't come up with the times. Capricious, volatile, wide mood swings, depression. This also helped alienate them even more. Well, it didn't allow them to kind of, as easily as they would have liked, slide back into the way things are. They retreated into their own legacies. They became more maniac, especially on the Seelie side. And the unseelie side, depravity, corruption. They sank deep into their respective areas. And ruthlessness, fighting came about this. Now, the advances. The second arrival, the second wave of Arcadia to Concordia. From, of course, the result of 9/11 and everything that happened in the new millennium. Turmoil. This radical amount of fear and emotion caused more Sidhe to come. Now, some of these newcomers, new in here, adjusted again. Others had more extreme views in their roles. They wanted to retaliate more against the commoners here, more divisiveness. As much as things had calmed after the original coming in, this was a new wave of conflict. They grabbed for more power, more betrayal, more bloodshed, war. Basically, there was still this fantasy that they could return the great societies of the Fae back to the way they were in the old days. The returning house of this resurgence, they had half a century to establish dynamics and to adjust to new technology and politics. Those of the advances had about a decade. But Arcadian Cygnets, have been getting to adjust. Here's the thing. More Arcadian sheep are still arriving. They're trickling in through truths that temporarily open by glimmers. Now, these newer ones that are just kind of randomly there are better than the first two waves in a lot of ways, as many of the old traditions in courts have been restored. There's new balance of powers with the commoners. They haven't had the same culture shock. They haven't had to adjust in a lot of ways. But the Arcadian Sidhe have closed rank, can solid power in their freeholds, in ways that haven't been since the resurgence, in the wake of advances. So there's still tensions. Tensions that had been easing in the 1990s, have come back in full in the 20th century. New social and political movements that threaten their power and secure the Arcadian Sidhe, the power they've established in them. And finding himself more and more unfavorable compared to the Autumn Sidhe. Talk about another video, but yeah, have been around and have been there with the commoners and have been earning more and more respect as this division is coming more and more. Two groups are being treated more and more differently. Interesting juxtaposition. That's why it was important to talk about these two groups, because they are separating so heavily, slowly but surely, in many ways. So if you take a look at a Sidhe, they're like humans, but beautiful, flawless, even features, balanced, large eyes, striking colors, silver and amethyst, pointed ears, tall, slender, hair shining and silken, brightly colored, walking with a grace of nobility. Dressed without exception in materials that are the finest or chimerical gowns that defy physics. They appear noble. And they do just that. They put themselves in positions of importance. Within mortal realms, it's often in business and political situations where they can shine on the stage. But they also have other pursuits. Money and luxury tend to come easy to them. If they don't, well, that can kind of drive you to the unseelie courts. Sometimes. If we look at the different ages, the childlings, beautiful, ephemeral, inheritors of privilege. Every desires met, they are spoiled, but they still learn the courtly ways. And they learn to channel that entitlement into grace and dignity. There's still a hunger for more, and tantrums can occur if they don't get what they want. When they reach the wilder, they're more importantly connected to governments at that point in time. They're schooled in chivalry, courtly behavior, obligations of a noble, basically over your vassals and the land which you reign. At best, they exhibit overconfidence and a slightly inflated sense of grandeur. At worst, they become enmeshed in deception and intrigues of politics, learning to manipulate others to their own advantage. Arcadian Sidhe struggle with the humility in the wilder scene. They must learn that respect must be given in order to be received. Sidhe grumps are dignity and mobility embodied. They embrace their obligations and expect obeisance and loyalty in return. They bring fiefdom, grace and dignity, giving commoners a voice and helping maintain the balance between bedlam and banality. A grump who has been seduced by their own power can lead their people to ruin, invading chaos into the court. And in later years, the weight of memories of the exile pressed down upon them in their minds. Maybe their legacy is lost in this mortal world. It could happen. There are two major things that we have to note about their birthrights. Is there an earthly beauty? There are additional dots in appearance, mechanically speaking, if you kind of want to mention that there. And of course, their noble bearing. Their dignity at all times. That's when the traditional Sidhe, Frailty, comes in. Because the Arcadian Sidhe are the ones that have the traditional one. The Curse of Banality. Where they receive 2 points of banality for every 1. They're basically weak to banality even more than your average Kith. Now, they do see themselves as the purest embodiments of the dreaming. They gather Gamma through inspiring adoration and aberration of others. Attending a party and simply being visible, performing in public, whether it's a good or bad performance, or acting in some kind of leadership capacity, will all be a revelry for them. And when it comes to Unleashing, it's accompanied by shimmering auras of light, steely, or darkness for unseelie. That's both beautiful and painful to look at, whether it's light or darkness. But they also appear to beckon in courtly regalia to those that witness them unleashing themselves. as if you were standing in a great hall of a palace, ready to impress. Okay. But there is the Arcadian sheet. I wanted to do these videos because they are still separate. They are still a defining thing. And as you can see, as much as I talked about she as a whole in a previous episode, check that out, you can see that the Arcadian ones are dividing between it. The more the division occurs and the more time will go by, I do feel like it will become more juxtaposed. The Arcadian she still resist a lot of the changes that the Autumn she had to go through in a lot of ways. And it comes down to more of a traditional side versus a more radical side in many ways, or more of a side that has learned to adapt over millennia, over centuries, time. It's a sheer fact that these two groups are still she, but they may never be a combined she ever again. Things are too different between them. They've gone through too many different things. And looking at the two groups gives us this kind of interesting idea about where they are going and how they've evolved differently, and how, honestly speaking, things can change even for Kith and Changelings very easily by having this separation. They culturally and physically can alter and change with the history around them. It is the nature of the dreaming in a lot of ways to dream differently. And sometimes those dreams stay the same. And sometimes they don't. And she was a grand example of it. That'll be it for today, and I hope you've enjoyed joining me on this one. As I said, I wanted to do a specific video for both of these, just to give you an idea about how they're different and why they are very interesting, dynamically different from each other. If you want to see more of my tabletop stuff, go check me out either live over on Twitch or over on the YouTube side for more stuff. Please go check out things. YouTube is the best way to catch all my tabletop stuff. That's where everything gets uploaded. But if you want to join me live, always up for that. You can always check out my social media to see when I'm live. Or for the kind of things I can shout out at exact times, all that as well as my current live play, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Wednesdays at 8, and Discussing Tabletop Saturdays at 6. All EST times is my talk showy podcasting thing, where we talk news of the week and deeper discussion topics. Again, you don't have to catch anything there. You can always check it on YouTube. And if you're over on YouTube, please do remember to subscribe. And let me know all your thoughts about this in the comments. Alright, I'm going to get going. Until the next time, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.